We're now deep in the midst of our Super Weeks, and there's been so many great games this week alone to discuss. As standard, I'm going to be going through my favourite moments from across the world, and give you a rundown on my opinion on those games. If you're enjoying this series so far, then feel free to drop a like as it helps the channel grow, and if this is your first time on the channel, then welcome and it's a pleasure to have you here. If you enjoy your stay here, then a subscribe would be appreciated, as there's a lot more similar content like this coming on its way to the channel. As we keep growing on this channel and creating more content, if you have any friends that you think will like what we're doing over here on the channel, then feel free to share it with them and get the word out. So without further ado, let's jump into our Super Week that we saw in week 4. I want to shake things up a bit this week, so this time we're going to start with North America, even though those were the playdays that we saw towards the later ends of the week. MIRAGE had a big week, bouncing back from a tough few weeks at the start of the season, picking up 2 wins against the newly promoted Challenger League teams. I think before diving into anything in particular in these games, I just wanted to say that with these results, I think that MIRAGE have proven to the league and to everyone watching that they deserve their spot in Pro League and Tier 1 competition. So after their big win and great team performance in their first game of the week against Beast Coast, with a great game from the support players of Dreamin' Loading and of course Hot and Cold, there was pressure on MIRAGE to show that they are a level apart from the newly promoted Challenger League teams, as they found themselves facing another promoted CL team, NAVI. NAVI showed they came to play in the first round with a nice rush down blue to Arsenal to counter MIRAGE's SSG type roam. We saw great teamwork however from MIRAGE, and all these players really understand the importance of working together. Take this post plant in a 2v1, working together to double peek the last guy on plat, minimizing unnecessary risk, and they saw the fruits of that with every player having a good game. I was super impressed with the clutch potential from these players on attack. A few times they found themselves in low time executes with even or less man advantage, and they still managed to pull the round out the bag. That type of siege is some of the most enjoyable to watch, and has the echoes of BDS, where they still managed to pull the round out of the bag with minimal time and manpower. We saw every one of their players have a presence on the scoreboard. However, what let them down and stopped them from closing the game out decisively in regulation for the full 3 points was small mistakes they committed that allowed NAVI to mount a comeback all the way back to overtime. Thomas and Creators did everything they could to drag their team over the line, but it was an overall team performance from MIRAGE instead of a high fragging performance from NAVI that saw MIRAGE narrowly close out the game 8-7 in overtime. These last 2 games have been so much more well-rounded as a team. Loading and Dream specifically have really shown their worth and what it means to be a true competitor, answering valid criticism with big performances. If they can keep doing so, and Hot and Benji and Nix can keep turning rounds in their favour, they should be posed for a good rest of the split. The challenge now for them is to complete a well-rounded team win against some of the more established bigger opponents. We saw TSM have a frustrating few playdays for themselves as they took close losses to Soniqs and OXG. In the Soniqs game, we saw an absolute banger, and in this game, both teams used their utility very well on attack, but I was impressed with the patience as well from both teams. Most rounds we didn't see any player overexpose themselves prematurely without having some sort of way to rotate back or cover to play behind. And I think with Soniqs specifically, their pacing this season has been very impressive. They've had good turtle setups centered around utility, and then on the other hand, rounds that are centered around roaming and wasting time on the roam clear. And after a lot of great rounds, it ended up being full overtime with Soniqs taking it. With this game, they topped the NAL after being 1-5 down in their attacking half against a great team like TSM, showing another strength of a top team, being mental fortitude. Grixer has been one of the best players in the world this season. I think almost every game he's been in double digits for kills, and it's a shame that we won't get to see this new Soniqs roster in the upcoming Invitational, as I think they could go on a good tournament run and potentially find their way to the latter stages of the tournament. In TSM's second game, OXG showed that their form so far isn't a bluff, with a big 7-5 win against TSM. It's the 3rd time that TSM went to Chalet, and I wonder if they will show any Chalet in the 6th Invitational. It's almost inevitable, right? OXG showed that they had done good research on TSM's previous Chalet games, as they were ready for what TSM had on defense in their attacking rounds, taking a 4-2 split, moving halves onto defense. I feel like any map with a basement favors lurkers and roamers, and when the site is upstairs like Villa Kitchen or Oregon Dorms, players like Laxing can really flourish when they're defending spots like Bar Gaming, and he did in this game. And on this point, it was really nice to see both flankwatch players Charla and Laxing utilising Zero. Those cameras can help in a multiple story map, and we saw some creative placements of the cams. Respect to Redeemer and all the staff behind Oxygen for making sure that they planned their game plan around what TSM had shown in the previous 2 playdays on Chalet, and even more respect to a still gelling roster in OXG for implementing the game plan to such a strong team like TSM. And on LAN too. Oxygen want that first place spot and they don't care who they've got to face next to have it. And they also had another big win against the top rival in SSG, taking a big 8-7 win against them. To be fair to SSG, they play their roles so well. Every player, Luke included, understand what their role is and what they need to do in a round. The problem is, against a team like OXG, I think they need all 5 players at one time to have a good game when it comes to kills, as a lot of OXG's style is their ability to set themselves up to win gunfights. Vertical or laxing lurking in an off-site position ready to take up fights with the enemy players, and in this match specifically, I think Bosco and Luke struggled on support to be able to deal with the OXG aggression. OXG on defense played quite loose against SSG with a lot of solo plays. It's a bit of a gamble against SSG considering how coordinated they are. On one hand, you could catch them off guard with some unorthodox plays and frustrate them. On the other hand though, they could anticipate this going into the game and completely shut it down. I feel like OXG are known for that aggression with the players they have, so it was shut down by SSG early doors. It wasn't looking to work out great in the first 3 rounds, but the last 3 rounds of their defense it worked out in their favour and they pulled themselves back into an even half, moving on to attack. They continued their momentum with great attacking prowess. I was specifically impressed with their late round executes, with breaching then burning plant denial to go in and replant. With Bosco and Luke having difficult games, I was really impressed with ThinkingNade's consistency and survival rate in the late rounds. He was often the player on the final kill cam picking up the last OXG player trying to make a comeback in that round. And on ThinkingNade, check out this incredible kill. So lucky, but this is why we love Siege.
Kill. Still a C4 in the pocket of ThinkingNade. That's going to be the linchpin here for SSG if it ends up being a plant play for Oxygen. Oh! Doesn't even mean to do it! But ThinkingNade will take down Laxing through the wall.
And things really didn't get any easier for SSG, who took a hard 7-4 loss to DZ, who bounced back with a retaliation performance after taking a shock upset to Xset the previous playday. On DZ, Hyper is one of those players like Shaiko or Charla where it's extremely rare for them to have a bad game personally, regardless if their team is winning or losing. DZ have such strong attacks, and in the meta we're in now, where things are starting to be more kind to attackers, it's fair to say that Dark Zero must be enjoying this current meta. This week we have really seen the true Hyper and NJR duo, not one or the other. They've been ruthless as a fragging 1-2 punch. I think when it comes to Dark Zero, it benefited them knowing how they want to play with their new player compared to SSG where Luke was only helping them out with Canadian's sudden departure, where they are still trying to figure out how they want to evolve moving forward. They will need to evolve though, as that's the key, because how things are now aren't working consistently enough. Whether they eventually make a roster move or stick it out as a team and work out how they will balance the load between them, we will have to see one or the other. Jumping over to EU, and we saw a game of the ages. We saw G2 versus Empire, and this matchup to me, regardless of the rosters, will always be a replica of a thrilling time in the history of Siege. The dominant G2 versus the up-and-coming Empire team hungry to take their throne. And it did end up being the nail-biting derby that we hoped for as these two rivals traded blows on Consulate. Unfortunately, of course, the teams aren't as globally dominant as they used to be, but G2 is still looking like a very strong team a few years later, but Empire seems to have slowly faded away outside of their major win last season. However, they answered those same critiques and rebounded massively after a tough start to the 2021 season and closed out G2 8-7 on Consulate. Specifically in this game, I wanted to point out a really cool Yoki drone setup, something that we'd typically see G2 do over the years that just shows their innovation and creativity. Since his nerf, Echo has struggled with hiding his drones as they are no longer invisible, and it's not super viable to have them really far away from sight, as they'll usually be shot and intercepted before they can make it all the way to the plant spot. So how about hiding them on the floor below through a hatch? They used a Yoki drone to jump up through Piano Hatch into CEO, and if this worked against a very organised team like Empire, I can definitely see this working in my ranked games. I think putting Joystick back on Sophia and Entry was a good idea, which they did go on to do. Something I liked and I had mentioned would be a consideration in my previous video is how Empire put Joystick back on Sophia and Entry. This was a good idea. I know he kind of faded away on this role at the height of the utility meta, and that was part of why he was moved on to support to try a different role. But with the multiple high kill performances he has put in over the last 6 months, along with this new meta we find ourselves in being more focused around roaming and entry kills, it made sense to have him move back onto this role. And with the first win against G2, their role swaps look to be off to a good start. Hopefully they don't revert back to what they've been doing for the last 5-6 months when it comes to roles in their next game. And you can really tell by the great Empire performance how much this game still means to them. Most of the players on the team are still the same players who battled against G2 at the height of their rivalry, so it would only be logical to me that despite their poor form this season, they would definitely turn up for this game no matter what. Will it be a turning point for Empire along with the role changes they've made that will lead them now to head on and do well in the rest of this split? Or do you think it was the importance of this G2 fixture and how much it means to these players that saw them be able to break the disappointing trend of performances that they've put in so far this season? Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Overall, with Kanto having a disappointing game on a fragging flex role, they couldn't seem to best Empire, and the entire game was eventually decided from less than a second, where G2 were milliseconds from disabling the final planted diffuser. Heartbreaking stuff for G2. We had another big game this play day, with BDS taking on Rogue. With the form both teams were in, this was one of the most anticipated games of the season, and with Rogue at full throttle, I think they're one of the only teams in EU that can afford to try and play aggressive against BDS and stand a chance to succeed from it, and that's what they tried to do on their defense playing a map like Consular, and I respect that. It was just about having that aggression on a leash this season and not going crazy where there's no structure. And to be honest, this playstyle did keep them in the game but didn't give them any significant advantage, ending 2-4 on their defense on an attacker-sided Consulate. I was really impressed with the coordination of Rogue on attack. Against a team like BDS, if you're not working with your teammates, the guns of BDS will punish you. And on BDS, I really have to mention, when was the last time Shaiko had a bad game? Win or loss, it's truly incredible how consistent he is on his fragging role. And for me personally, it was really nice to see Brede have one of his best games this season. He's my favourite player in all of Pro League, and it was really good to see him shine in a big game like this with an MVP performance. The only team this season to beat BDS, NAVI, faced out against Vitality, and both teams had something to prove. At this point, the question was, would NAVI keep pace with BDS and win the game to stay top? And would Vitality be able to beat the top 4 teams to earn a top 4 spot? And Vitality answered that with an 8-6 win against NAVI. Vitality are one of those very few teams in T1 that in my opinion are exactly even between their strategy and aggressive gunplay. Most top teams are more than capable at doing both, but lean to one or the other, whereas for me, Vitality is split 50-50, with equally as much sporadic aggression as tactical team-based executes and strategy. From late round executes to Amaru going up the hatch to rush plant, their creativity and diversity is impressive. I think the coordination out of Vitality was too much for NAVI. Not that NAVI are unorganised, but the level of synergy between these Vitality players was top notch, such great pacing round to round, and no players hiding on their role, all filling them perfectly, against some of the best gunners in the league in the likes of NAVI, so massive respect for that. Cowana took on Team Secret, and a couple of role swaps that focused around Prano and Gomfi switching roles, with Prano back on entry and Gomfi on breach with Hyphen Nomad, seemed to be favouring them, as their attacking half on Oregon seemed to be a lot more effective. Their trademark strategy was helping them flourish, with the entries now doing their job instead of holding them back because some of the high kill players are on support roles like previously. I think that the game was Secret's to lose with a massive round advantage at the split, but with Grizzly heating up as the game went on, Cowana just seemed to get stronger and stronger and overpower Secret and push the rounds in their favour, closing the game out 7-5. Secret really need to find a way to pick up the form because they're really struggling more than I think they should be this season. A lot of these players are seasoned players at pro level, and the performances they're putting in, partly because they're still trying to gel as a roster, have just not been good enough for this level. I don't think a team like Secret with the players they have should even be worrying about getting into relegation battles, but their performances this season have said otherwise. There's not really any excuses, but what I can say is that I think they're more than capable to do better than this, and if they can find a way to fix their issues, they could be much more of a problem for those teams near the top of the table when it comes to trying to secure points in their games against Secret. But right now, it's not looking that way. Moving on to the Wild West, LATAM. FaZe looked to have brushed off their overtime loss to NIP in the previous playday, but then took a shock upset to INTZ. You start to wonder now if maybe the loss to Ninjas in Pyjamas has shot their confidence a bit and they're starting to get in their heads. Myself, as much as anyone else, has given massive plaudits, and they deserve it, to the 4/5 of the ex-MIBR roster stepping up onto this mantle of FaZe and hitting the ground running, but part of being a top team is the longevity and consistency over a season. And thinking back to last year when they were on MIBR and they finished in the 4th or 5th spot, on consistency, not being able to beat the lower placed teams every single time they faced them throughout a season was something they struggled with. I hope they can get over this blip and not let it hold them back this season or at the 6th Invitational, as they are a very exciting roster with many BR6 household names who could become stars when it comes to international recognition. Team Liquid took a 7-4 win to Team 1, and it was another dominant performance by Liquid. The individual talent from the Team 1 players opened the door for them to mount a comeback. If they can find more coordination on their attacks, the quality of these players individually has shown that they have the potential to pull off upset wins against these big teams in LATAM like Liquid. We saw the dark horse of the season, Furia, take a win over INTZ, and we also saw a landmark moment in the BR6 this week. With INTZ missing VNX due to unforeseen circumstances, we saw the first female player to play the BR6 with Miranda playing for INTZ. Hopefully this is the start of many more talented female players getting exposure and a chance to shine in the Rainbow Six pro scene. Furia closed out INTZ 7-5, still on a great run with Fancy and Lender, really the whole squad as well being able to hold their own on their own roles. Something to love about LATAM is the gun skill, which allows you to see so many great high kill games out of the support players along with your typical fraggers of the team. There's nothing quite like seeing the SMG11 or the Auda in the right player's hands. Now, with all the main games done that I wanted to go over and recap of Week 4's gameplay, I wanted to make a special mention to Frost across all the regions. It's been great to see. I think she's one of the most versatile operators in the game, and nowadays without being selfish when it comes to team composition. Whether you're on site behind the shield creating lines of sight with the secondary shotgun, or you're off site using the 1.5 scope to hold a power position, she's great at the moment. And don't count out the frost mats, we've seen more than a few kills with those things. TSM, for example, lost their game to OXG from a failed rush due to some unexpected frost mats, so yeah, she's a great op right now. And with Muta Mozzie being so prevalent, she's another operator that requires you to sink more time into droning, so with less time left to execute, you can easily find yourself in a situation where you have to shoot downwards to destroy the frost mat and get shot by an enemy from another angle, or do the reverse and get injured by the mat. And we saw something else great this week. After the Mirage exec game, we saw the first use of the replay system be used in a pro broadcast. Hopefully it's the start of a new era, as these replay breakdowns will really keep leveling up the Siege competitive experience for a viewer and a player alike. So with everything wrapped up that I wanted to go through, thanks again for stopping by, I really appreciate it as usual. These games have been absolutely nuts this season. There's been so many mad kills, so many little crazy 3Ks, 4Ks, aces. It feels like every time I'm watching Pro League I'm seeing something so enjoyable. And it's just been a real joy to not only watch and get involved in, but make these videos as well. So thanks for anyone that's watching, and as I've said, if you know anyone that will enjoy these videos, then yeah, feel free to share it around and enjoy. And let's talk about these great teams and matches that we're getting to watch. If you enjoyed the video, drop a like, and if you want to keep up to date with more videos like this that are on their way to the channel, then drop a subscribe. Thanks, and I hope you enjoyed. See you later.